Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Kim, content creator of the Archive of Antiquity channel here on YouTube. In this video, the topic of discussion will center around the decoding of an ancient artifact and what its interpretation of hidden messages may mean for the future of humanity. So I'll begin by stating that based upon my having worked to decode this ancient petroglyph, something is wrong in a way that is not very well understood at this particular time in history. Having said that, I will attempt to explain to viewers why I have drawn these conclusions. Several months ago, back in August of 2024, it was my original intention to complete the entire multi-part video series entitled Ancient Messages in Stone, Decoding the Syrian Tree of Life by the summer of 2025, and to make it available for public viewing around this time. The multi-part presentation has been developed as a 10-part video series, with Part 5 consisting of 3 separate subparts. However, it was last year during the month of August 2024, when I was working on refining certain parts of the presentation, that I received what I'll define as a hyperdimensional form of communication and instruction to stop what I was doing and to extract a portion of content that I had been developing in Part 6 and to place this content into Part 7 for later development. Upon doing so, I received another spiritual impression that I needed to begin the process of proofing and refining the content that I had already completed for Parts 1 through 6 for the purpose of making it publicly available as soon as possible. Now, at the time that I received this spiritual impression, I intuited a vague sense of urgency on the part of what I'll call a collective spiritual presence that has been with me for many years now. What I mean is that, based upon the many years of personal experience and spiritual interaction that I have had with this collective body of spiritual entities, this sudden and abrupt shift or change in course related to the long-term project that I have been working on gives me cause for concern. In other words, I will go so far as to say that it was as if this spiritual collective became aware of something in time, or something having occurred in time, or the possibility that something had changed in time. I'm not really sure. But I got the sense that whatever they may have become aware of back in August of 2024 was serious enough for them to override my original intention to complete the entire multi-part presentation and to make it publicly available by the summer of 2025. So instead of my being able to complete the video series in its entirety, like I had originally intended, the spiritual entities that I am in communication with instead tasked me with developing a series of sneak previews for parts 7, 8, 9, and 10 to include supplement 8.5 and 9.5 in lieu of fully completing each of these parts. Now, as it relates to my communication with this spiritual collective, I have been in communication with them for many years now and have become accustomed to the way in which they attempt to bring my attention to something of importance or to bring my attention to something that they feel I need to be made aware of. Having said that, based upon the sudden and abrupt shift and change in course that I was directed to undertake back in August 2024, in addition to a series of coincidences that I experienced since this time, which culminate or converge as an informational cluster in the first quarter of 2025, it would appear that this spiritual collective is emphasizing a triangulation of connection between Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson's work related to the 26,000-year precessional cycle, Robert Grant's work related to the Great Pyramid, and Walter Henry's hypothesis related to what he terms as the Osiris device. This spiritual emphasis, if you will, is underscored by the interpretation of hidden messages that have been decoded from within this ancient petroglyph. With that said, there are 3 major points of emphasis that I would like to make here with regard to what the Apkallu Sages have encoded within this stone tablet. The first major point is the fact that within part 1 of this presentation, under the section which talks about various forms of symbolism related to both the world pillar and the world tree, there is a configuration that represents the pillars of foundation. It is the activity that occurs atop both of these pillars that is concerning. Now, you'll have to understand and appreciate the fact that I had originally developed and created this particular portion of the presentation way back in 2017 and 2018. Not knowing then what I know now about Graham and Randall's work as it relates to the 26,000 year precessional cycle, it would appear that there may be an underlying message or meaning that is being conveyed within this configuration. Which brings me to the second major point. It was between 2015 to 2017 that I had developed another configuration that I now believe may be connected to the activity that is occurring atop the pillars of foundation in part 1. I say this because during the month of December 2024, the spiritual collective of entities that I'm in communication with impressioned me to expand upon this particular illustration and to apply it to the series of interpretations that I have decoded from within this petroglyph. At the time, I got the sense that they were trying to emphasize some important point. One thing I would like to say is that this particular configuration that they had me to expand upon in December actually appears in part 10 of the video series. So it wouldn't be until I read Graham Hancock's book entitled The Magician of the Gods in February of 2025, and my having watched Randall Carlson's lecture on the 26,000 year precessional cycle within the same month, that I began to seriously wonder if all of these things were connected somehow. Which brings me to the third major point. Part 6 of this video series is jam-packed with important information that appears to be quite timely as it relates to our collective history of human existence on this planet. What I will say is that there is a very clear message that comes through in part 6, and that the hidden messages that have been decoded from within this petroglyph are attempting to warn and prepare all of humanity of impending change. As a matter of fact, I am going to go so far as to say that we are on the threshold of something very big, that something is on its way, and that something is incoming. With that said, I'm going to refer back to the configuration that appears in part 10 of this video series. When I thought about the possibility of what this configuration was conveying, I stated to myself within my mind that I needed to get in contact with Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson to see if I could get some feedback about what it was that I had configured. In so doing, the collective body of spiritual entities that I am in communication with impressioned me as if in no, that at this time, the focus is on having people to watch the video series in its entirety in order to get an understanding of the timeless series of messages that the Apkallu Sages have encoded in stone. I do not know if their position will change sometime in the future, but for now, I think it highly important that as many people as possible have an opportunity to view the presentation for themselves and to draw their own conclusions. In the meantime, and in this Fishers of Men moment, there are several other individuals in addition to Graham, Randall, Robert, and William, who are being called upon because of their knowledge, experience, or expertise related to ancient history, human origins, metaphysics, the Bible and biblical scripture, spirituality and the nature of reality, sacred geometry and numerology, the esoteric and occult sciences, as well as technical knowledge and experience related to mechanics and engineering. So, to that end, what I will say in closing is that I know what's coming in parts 7, 8, 9, and 10. I have pretty much laid down the outline and the architecture of the storyline for each part and have insight as to the nature of the messages that will be communicated when each part is finalized and released beginning in the spring of 2027. In the meantime, it will be important for viewers to watch part 1 through 6 of Ancient Messages in Stone, Decoding the Assyrian Tree of Life, and to draw their own conclusions. I will also go so far as to say that it is imperative for people to most especially watch part 6 of this video series in preparation for that which is coming upon the earth. Thanks for being here, thanks for listening, and until next time. Well, that's it for this video. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to be notified when we post new videos. Until next time.